Hi everyone. I take this opportunity to reflect with you on the nexus between religion and violence. Perhaps the strangest aspect of the religiosity that's flourishing today is that while theoretically religion is supposed to be a promoter of peace, it has become today the foremost fomenter of conflict, violence, destruction, and death. By now, the instance of Manipur, the genocide, the near genocidal condition that prevails there, extremely lamentable situation in which religion does play a major role. The latest episode is in Haryana. It started in Nu, and from there it has now spread to Gurugram. Large-scale destruction, in fact, lamentable loss of life are all reported. Now, I'm not in the least surprised that communal violence breaks out with sickening regularity. In fact, I would be very surprised if peace prevails, because the conditions that we have created in recent times and the conditions in which we are made to take pride are all conducive to the outbreak of violence rather than the prevalence of peace. Expressing insincere regret or sadness about the disturbance of peace and the threat to human life, etc., on account of communal violence. It's like buying a large can of petrol and then a matchbox, lighting the match, throwing it into the can full of petrol, and then the can bursting in flames. And you say, "Oh, look at the can of petrol, it's in flames." As though it's a surprising thing that petrol, which is inflammable by nature, catches fire. I see the present communal conflagration erupting in various parts of the country as exactly similar to this. So that doesn't worry me, that doesn't surprise me. My worry is only one thing, or my concern is only one thing, and that is instances of unspeakable human tragedy happen one after the other in our midst, but they all leave us unthinking. Somehow we refuse to look beyond the physicality of these outbreaks of violence and understand the grammar of this violence. And therefore, the constructive or positive outcome that could have generated from massive instances of human suffering and tragedy remain aborted. And that to me is the greatest issue. So, using the instance of Manipur and now the latest episode, two focal points of massive communal violence in Haryana, I invite you to join me to reflect on the relationship between religion and violence. Now, every religion, you ask the spokesperson of any religion, you will very quickly get the answer that the scriptures of my religion do not encourage anybody to practice violence. The Muslims are very quick to say that the Quran is an invitation to peace. After all, Islam means peace. Salam, Islam. Both Christianity and Judaism are religions of peace. Jesus is hailed by Christians or presented or preached to the rest of the world by Christians as the King of Peace. The great blessing in Hinduism is peace, shanti, 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 shantihi. Let peace alone prevail. But the ground realities are very different. And we need to really reflect on this. Now, In order to be objective in our thinking, let's look away from the immediate context, because we are apt to be rather subjective when we reflect on that which is immediate to us. And when we are subjective, we can only adopt partisan standpoints. Let's look for a moment away from India to Europe. We all know that Europe went through a long period of convulsion, sectarian violence. Sectarian because the interminable or seemingly interminable wars of Europe, for which Europe paid a huge price, was not the result of the conflict or competition between two religions, though of course religious wars also took place, the conflict between Islam and Christianity. For the most part, it was the bloodshed between sects or schisms within Christianity, particularly the wars between Catholics and Protestants. The wars fought between France and England were sectarian wars. France was Catholic. England, in the wake of Henry VIII's decision to divorce his wife and to marry another one, which was not countenanced by Pope, the bishop in Rome, and the king declared his independence from the yoke of Roman control. The Great War, the series of wars. The bloodshed between England and Ireland, again the same thing, Protestants versus Catholics. So, periodic and massive outbreaks of communal violence and the unthinkable human suffering resulting from it compelled, forced Europeans to think as to where they were headed. Intense suffering made them realize that the religiosity they had embraced was poisonous, was indeed death-oriented. If your religion is inspiring or impelling you only to commit atrocities, to spill blood, to kill your neighbor, then your religion is a religion of violence. There's no point in saying that my scriptures advocate peace, tolerance, etc. No. Your religion will be known through you, how you conduct yourself. And if you think that if you claim that your religion obligates you to kill and to maraud, then your religion will only be known as a religion of violence, of bloodthirstiness. So Europeans woke up to this harsh reality, and they woke up much too late, I'm afraid, but they did wake up. And therefore they realized that if Europe were to live in peace, they had to exclude religion from the public sphere. Please understand. They realized that so long as religion was allowed free play in the public domain, people will not be able to live in peace. Therefore, the peace formula that the Europeans devised was to liberate the public space of European countries from the poisonous presence of religion. Only thereafter, European countries settled down. So secularism was a desperate remedy evolved by European consciousness in order to protect itself from complete extinction on account of the chronic sectarian force that convulsed various nations in Europe. So what most people in India don't realize is that secularism arose from the terrible furnace of communal or sectarian conflagration, which resulted in the Enlightenment that religion can be a plague spot. And religion, no matter what you say about it, in terms of its historical presence, its witness in history, its operations in history, has always been a plague spot of inhumanity. So, just as in Europe, the unbearable, unthinkable calamities induced by people's religious zeal from which the light of humanity was consistently excluded, made them realize that religion was the problem rather than the solution to the problem. And therefore made them come to the conclusion that if they were to live in peace, they have to keep religion out of the public sphere. So also I beg to submit, these increasing episodes of massive communal conflagrations today invite us to sit up and think. And I don't see any sign of that thinking process happening anywhere. That's the reason why I'm doing this video, for the sake of those who might care to listen to me. To me, the number one agenda, the great invitation that emerges from the unthinkable human suffering in Manipur and now spreading into Haryana and from there God knows where, is an invitation to consider the nature of religion and the nature of popular religiosity, particularly the massive and mendacious, dishonest abuse of religion as a handmaiden of political electoral ambitions, degrading the very soul of the religious tradition concerned. You can't consistently abuse religion for the sake of material political gains in terms of power, and then say, why is religion having this kind of an outcome? Well, that's exactly what you want. So those who use religion for political gains have no moral right to express any kind of regret or surprise that communal violence is breaking out every now and then, here, there and everywhere. What you have to do is not to rush 50 companies of paramilitary force, or even deploy the army, or beat the breast in public that people are killing each other. What you have to do is to renounce completely, mercilessly, without any excuse, communal religiosity, the kind of massive gains, unfortunately, that it offers to those who are unconscionable enough to prostitute their religion for the sake of political gains. That is the greatest issue in India at the present time. And unless and until this issue is sorted out, India will not know peace. And the image of India abroad, which is assiduously being built up with a huge investment of money and great fanfare, will be tarnished beyond repair. We're living in a global village of civilization. People have perceptions very, very different to what we entertain. One very funny thing that I find in India at the moment, in my country at the moment, is we expect everybody anywhere in the world to feel about whatever happens in this country exactly as we do. By we, I mean the dominant group. And a great deal of indignation and anger is exhibited when people in other parts of the world look at the events happening in our country from a very different perspective, from their perspective of commitment to human rights, from their perspective of equality in the eye of law, from their perspective of the culture of liberal democracy, so on and so forth. Nobody else beyond our borders is obliged to lap up the kind of rhetoric that's being generated here. We have no control over them. As an Indian citizen living here, I am under obligation to lap it up. Otherwise, I'll get into serious trouble. But others are not. Therefore, my dear friends, one thing is very clear to me. All these communal episodes, and they're going to increase, not decrease. And they go up and down depending on the proximity or otherwise of elections. We all know that. Therefore, these are all deliberately provoked and induced unnatural states. So as far as I'm concerned, this very lamentable, alarming situation invites us to reflect on the extremely dangerously perverted relationship between religion and politics in India. Unfortunately, 75 years ago, when we got our freedom, the idealists in those years, at that time, including Mahatma Gandhi, felt that religion would be a reservoir of universal values and ideals, and therefore the nexus between, or the collaboration between politics and religion would keep politics a principal practice in the interest of public welfare. This was the intention. They could never anticipate the kind of depravity and degeneration that has overtaken us today. If they had that kind of foresight, they would have said, keep it completely out. This idea of Indian brand of secularism, which is a state being equidistant to all religions. It's bunkum. It cannot happen in a society where, multi-religious society, where one community brutally dominates over the rest. Hindus are about 82% of India's population. And therefore, the entire judiciary, legislature, executive, all the subordinate services, all are bound to be dominated by one community. And then to say that the state will be equidistant to all religions is bunkum. It's a kind of naivete that not even a small fish in a local pond or a frog in a local pond will swallow. It cannot happen if you're honest about human nature. It cannot happen. I'm a Christian, let me say this to you, within my community, within a small church, a priest will not be equidistant to all members. He will be closer to those who have money, those who have influence, those who have glamour. Therefore, I don't expect the Indian state to be equidistant. I should be out of my mind to expect the Indian state to be equidistant. I expect the Indian state to be partisan. I have no hesitation in saying this to you. Therefore, the idea that the Indian model of secularism will work sounds so strange to me. And therefore, today India stands at the crossroads. Either we adopt the European model, the European North American model of secularism, by which there is a clean cut between religion and politics, between church and state, or we accept the Sangh Parivar vision of a Hindu Rashtra, where Hinduism will be the dominant religion, in fact the religion of the state, which I'm afraid that's already the case. And I have accepted it. I don't have a problem. And unfortunately, the Muslims refuse to accept it. And that community has to think very seriously and very realistically about where we are at the moment. And as a Christian, I can only say this to you, minority, and somebody who has fought for minority rights all my life, I have to say this to you, that the religious minority communities have also played a role in bringing about the present kind of situation. Even if the role that they have played is ancillary or minor, it's a fact that nobody really respected the constitutional ideals and accepted them in any kind of systematic, meaningful fashion. Now it is too late. I'm not advocating hopelessness. I'm only saying we must be realistic. I do not rule out the possibility that there will be a regeneration of our ideal, the ideal that the framers of the Indian Constitution envisaged some 75 or 80 years ago when the Constitution of India was on the anvil. Because in history, what I've learned is that the ultimate choice does not rest with human beings. We have seen many great, powerful leaders come and go. They all came to grief. History has a peculiar genius for punishing those who presume too much. Otherwise, Hitler would not have perished in a Berlin bunker. And Napoleon Bonaparte would not have died a miserable and lonely death on an island called St. Helena. Forget not these episodes. Think of Alexander, going back. He perished at the age of 33, at the peak of his power. And story goes that he ordered that when his body is taken on a procession, his hand should be kept outside the coffin so that the bystanders would know that he was not taking anything from this world. So, eternal realities are there, but under the aegis or under the umbrella of this eternal reality, small men strut and fret upon the stage, as Shakespeare's Richard II says. They think they have the power to kill with looks, to monarchize and to make people tremble, but then time will come with its pin and it will prick and the bubble will burst and no one will see them thereafter. That's the reality. Therefore, I'm not saying therefore that we should give up hope. What I'm saying is that so long as we maintain and perpetuate the same attitude, indefensible attitude of playing fast and loose with the ideals of the Indian Constitution, we have no hope. We have no right to hope. I do not believe that there is a single religious leader who believes in the fundamental values of the Indian Constitution. For example, equality. Can Christians really say that all religions are equal? Will they say it? They may say it in public for public consumption, but they will not say it sincerely. I'm a Christian. I was a Christian priest. Let's be honest, for a change. Will a Christian leader, will any religious leader believe in freedom? And no freedom of religion is complete without freedom from religion? How can you say that freedom is freedom to conform to religion and only the freedom to conform? That is a complete contradiction. Freedom is not only the freedom to conform, freedom is also the freedom to cast it out, to walk out, to contradict, to debate, to doubt, to dissent. Do you think any religious leader really believes in freedom? Or for that matter, fraternity, that we are all brothers and sisters? I mean, these are all words to which we attribute no meaning at all. Therefore, my dear friends, the time has come for, and these events are urging us, virtually forcing us by our throat, to sit up and reflect on these realities. So, unless and until we as a nation wake up to the terrible pathology, the poison that is brewing within the cauldron of religion. All religions, I'm not pointing my finger at any particular religion. Every religion today, every religious community is in a state of deep and alarming degradation. And you expect ideals to emerge, an ideal conduct to emerge from this? I expect only communal conflicts and inhumanities to emerge from this. The more religious we are, the more inhuman we become. And this is not what I'm saying. You read a document like what Voltaire produced, I think in 1776, around that time. It's called Treatise on Toleration. Treatise on Toleration. The main argument in Voltaire's very historic, memorable writing is that the more zealous you are as a religious person, or the more religiously zealous you are, the more inhuman, callous, and cruel you are bound to be. And let me conclude the session by quoting the words, exact words of Voltaire. He said, "No man is a more cheerful killer than the one who believes that he is killing for the sake of his God." Think, for God's sake, think.